Hi 1301 students there in Cisco. I'm Professor Smith. I'll be your new instructor, taking over for Professor Moody. And I wanted to make a quick video and walk you through how to use Canvas and then walk you through what we're doing the first couple of weeks in class, especially if you can't be there our first meeting on Tuesday, the 29th. So this is our class here. Everything's going to look the same. You always click on modules. And the first module you will see is for the Little Seagull ebook. You need to purchase this book, at least the electronic version, and then you'll access it through here. So you'll click on that to read the chapters that I assign. I don't have any reading from that textbook these first 2 weeks. After that first module, I'll post a new module every week, and it just has what you were responsible for doing that week. It's simple, cut and dry. You can see I outline step by step what you need to do. Usually I do this week by week, but since there's so much we need to cover these first 2 weeks, I went ahead and put 2 weeks worth of work up here in this first module for weeks 6 and 7 of class, September 28th through October 11th. All steps in this module must be completed by October 11th before 11:59 p.m. And then I tell you what kind of assignment it is. It could be a reading, it could be watching this video, it could be a quiz, an actual assignment. This is where you'll turn in your first essay, 2 pages. The descriptive essay goes right there. Here's the prompt for that essay right there. So everything here, steps 1 through 12, will be due before midnight on October 11th. That's a Sunday. And you're off to a good start by watching this video, which is step 1. Also, I'm going to walk you through writing essay introductions and thesis statements, which go in the introduction, and then body paragraphs and conclusions. All 3 of these things go into every essay you'll ever write. So we're just going to quickly cover how to write these things, how to outline and write them, intros, body paragraphs, conclusions. So grab a pen and paper, get ready to pause this video and take notes because I'm going to zip right through this. Alright, so let's start with essay introductions. Every paragraph in your essay is devoted to a single idea. The idea here is to introduce the reader to everything they'll need to know to make sense of your essay. So the introduction is a roadmap that sets the tone, the path of your essay, captures the reader's attention, provides background, and then establishes the focus and purpose of the essay through a thesis statement. An introduction paragraph, here's how you'd outline one. It's made up of 3 things: a hook or an attention grabber, some background information, and the most important part of your entire essay, the thesis statement, which is kind of the main idea of the essay, all boiled down to a single sentence. And you need to pause this video and write that down. That's what goes in an introduction. So let's talk about hooks. Let's break it down even further. How do you capture the audience's attention? It's called a hook because you need to reel in the reader, make them interested, make them want to read your essay. So how do you do that? Well, you can include an interesting fact or statistic about your topic. You can find a quote about your topic that someone has said, or provide a brief, interesting anecdote or short story related to whatever the topic is. But the main point is that it should be interesting and specific. Reel the reader in. Here's what to avoid in an intro, and I won't read all these to you, but you can look here and see what to avoid. No definitions, no cliches. Don't start with a rhetorical question. That seems amateurish. You guys are college students now. After the hook, you should write some background information about your topic. Keep it broad, keep it simple, but give the reader enough information so they can make sense of the rest of your essay. Provide definitions for unfamiliar terms, if you have any of those. If you're writing about COVID-19, you will need to define what COVID-19 is. And just assume the reader doesn't know anything about this topic. And that's just something else for you to look over when you get a chance. It's more about context and background information. So after the hook and after the background information, you have your thesis statement. And we'll go over that in more detail in a minute. But if you look here, here's an example of an introduction paragraph. I've color-coded for you. You can pause the video and read this on your own, but I've provided a hook here about Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. The writer here, whoever wrote this essay, included a statistic or a fact about how much this movie has grossed, making one of the most successful films of all time. That's interesting. That gives me a specific number. It lets me know how successful this film is. That in itself is interesting. That's a hook about this topic. Then there's some background information here in blue. Looks like they took a historical approach and compared what Star Wars is doing for the science fiction genre, comparing it to the very first film ever made, which was Sneeze in 1894. And then in green here we have our thesis statement, which is the main idea of the essay, boiled down to a single sentence. And what they do here is they make a point about Star Wars, and then they list the three subjects of the body paragraphs. How Star Wars reshaped cinema due to its narrative and cinematic style, its genre, and its auteur theory. All right, let's move on to thesis statements. This is the last sentence in your introduction. What your thesis statement needs to include is a specific topic, a point that you want to make about the topic, and any points of discussion that you will go on to write about in the body paragraphs. Go ahead and list those in the thesis statement. So pause this video, write down what you need for your thesis statement, and just know that this thesis statement comes at the very end of your introduction paragraph, after the hook and background information. All right, after that, you're done with your thesis statement. Let's move on to body paragraphs. These are what you write. This is kind of the meat of the essay. So think of the introduction as the bread on top. Then you have your meat, which are your body paragraphs. And then your bread at the bottom, which is your conclusion. So one paragraph equals one idea. Your body paragraphs should each be devoted to one single idea, one single topic that you're writing about. A good way to remember how to write body paragraphs, so if you ever get confused or lost or you can't think of what to write, go back to this acronym of TEXES, and I will show you what I mean by that. So body paragraphs are a good 5 to 7 sentences generally. And here's how that breaks down. You'll need a topic sentence, which is the T in TEXES. You'll need to explain what you mean by that topic sentence. That's the E. X stands for example. Give an example of whatever your topic is. Analyze it a little bit. That's your role as a college student. You're not just summarizing or describing information. You're contributing original thought to it. So analyze what this topic means, what this example means. And then summarize the paragraph. And that's TEXES. That's just a way to outline and think about your body paragraphs. This first essay we're doing, you will have 3 body paragraphs. So you'll have to do this 3 times over. Your topic sentence is what it sounds like. You're introducing the topic of the paragraph. So if you're writing about COVID-19, you might write something about how COVID-19 has come to define the year 2020. Introduce the topic to the reader. That's the first sentence of any body paragraph. Explain what you mean by that topic. It might take a couple of sentences to kind of just further develop this idea. You can introduce it in one sentence, but then explain what you mean by that. That'll take care of a sentence or 2. You guys are college students. You need to provide examples and evidence of whatever it is you're writing about. So if you're writing about COVID-19 in the year 2020, give an example of what that means. We have to socially distance now. We have to wear masks. Or COVID-19 is a virus which can attack the lungs and it has a 5% death rate. Whatever it is you're writing about in this paragraph, give an example of it. That's the X in TEXES. And this is the trickiest part. You need to analyze whatever it is you're writing about. Break it down for the reader. Interpret it. Ask yourself, okay, so what? COVID-19 has come to define the year 2020. What does this mean for society? Why does this topic matter? How does it matter? Once you start answering those questions, you're analyzing, and that takes up a couple of sentences in each body paragraph. And then you'll just summarize the paragraph and transition to your next body paragraph or your conclusion, whatever comes next. This is just an exercise we will do in class. But if you're not in class to do that, here's an example of a body paragraph. Again, it's color-coded by topic, sentence, explanation, example, analysis, and summary. This is about Andy Warhol, the artist, being more than an artist, he was also a prophet, according to this writer. So this is the point they're making about Andy Warhol. He was more than an artist, he was a prophet. We're introducing the topic of this paragraph. Then in teal here, they're explaining what they mean by this topic sentence. So he was a prophet. Great. Explain that. Well, Warhol foresaw America's future in ways that could not have been predicted by mere artists. And then we give an example of how he did that. In the 1960s, long before the advent of YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, Warhol said that in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. Okay, so that's an example of how he was a prophet. And then the writer analyzes what they mean by that. Well, with websites and mobile device applications today, it's easy for someone to become famous, influential, or well-known. Warhol didn't predict the accessibility of fame, but he knew what fueled Americans' desires and dreams of mass recognition. Again, they're interpreting this information up here for the reader, asking themselves, okay, so what does it mean that he was a prophet? Why does this matter? How does it matter? They're analyzing. And then they're summarizing the paragraph with its clear Warhol saw into the future of American society in a far more prescient way than his contemporaries. Prescient just means that he was able to foretell things, kind of predict what was going on. So again, this is not rocket science. This is pretty easy. But if you ever get stuck and need a jumping off point for your body paragraphs, remember this approach, Texas. All right, the last paragraph in any essay will be your conclusion, and that's kind of a mirror image of the introduction. It's more than just a summary of the main points that you've had. So if you think about your conclusion, it begins very broad, right, with a hook, which could go anywhere, and then it gets a little more specific with the background information, and finally very specific with the thesis statement. Your conclusion is kind of the opposite of that. It begins very specific because you reword your thesis statement. Then you summarize and synthesize your main points from the essay. Don't just remind the reader of what they've read. Do some critical thinking for it. Combine those ideas and come up with your own, or combine those topics and make a new idea out of it in your conclusion. And then leave the reader with what I call a think statement, which is make a prediction or offer a solution about this topic. What does it mean for the future? What does it mean for society? Ask yourselves these questions and answer them in the essay. And then you're doing the critical thinking piece of writing college-level essays. So your introduction, you're going from a hook, which is this big, broad aerial view of a forest, down to a thesis statement, which is a single tree. So you're going from something very broad to something very specific. In your conclusion, you're going from a reworded thesis statement, something very specific, to something very broad, which is a think statement, which has big, worldwide, lasting implications. Or it should if it's done right. And finally, get ready to pause. Here's a color-coded example of a conclusion with our reworded thesis statement in red, background information or summary and synthesis of the main topics in blue, and then a think statement in green. And please pause this and read through this. It's about the sitcom Friends and how Ross didn't deserve the character Rachel. But look, the writer ties it to women's rights and domestic abuse in relationships. So big ideas here. That's what you should go for. All right. Thank you, and I'll see you guys soon.